All right, let's dive in. Today we're exploring everything is spirit.
Ooh, that's a big one.
It is, right? And we're looking at this Aaron Abke video.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, he makes this pretty wild claim that quantum physics, proves it.
Well, he tries to connect it, yeah.
Yeah, so let's see if he actually pulls it off.
It sounds good. I'm ready.
So he starts with this quantum entanglement thing.
Right, how particles can be linked across, huge distances.
Yeah, and they act like they're, connected somehow.
Exactly. And that's what he uses to jump to this oneness idea.
Okay, but that seems like a pretty big leap to me.
It is, and that's where his analogies come in.
Ah, the analogies.
Right,
Yeah.
think about a potter and clay.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
They can mold that clay into a pot or a plate or whatever.
It's all still just clay, right?
Exactly. So maybe everything we see, like trees and mountains.
Even us.
Yeah, even us, we're all just different forms of that same stuff.
Okay, so that stuff he's talking about, that's the spirit.
That's what he's saying.
I don't know if I'm buying it yet.
It's definitely a stretch. And he doesn't offer much, hard proof.
It's more like a spiritual interpretation of the science.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, let's look at another one of his analogies then.
Okay, which one?
The gold and jewelry one.
Ah, yeah, that's a good one.
So, gold can be made into a ring or a necklace.
Right, all these different forms.
But the value, he says, comes from the gold itself.
Yeah, the gold is what makes it valuable.
So is he saying that spirit is like the gold of the universe?
In a way, yeah. He's saying spirit is what gives everything value and meaning.
So a tree is basically tree-shaped spirit.
Well, this is a very simplified way of putting it, but I think you're getting the idea.
Okay, it's still a bit out there for me, but keep going.
All right, well, to really understand his logic, we need to look at how he ties this in with Jesus' teachings.
Oh, yeah, he does bring that in, doesn't he?
Yeah, he talks about how Jesus refers to the Father a lot.
Source of creation, right.
Exactly. And Abke seems to be suggesting that this Father could be the same as the Spirit he's talking about.
So basically, spirit is like the ultimate reality, the foundation of everything.
That's what he seems to be arguing.
Okay, I see where he's going with this.
And he uses another analogy to illustrate this point. The ocean and waves.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic one.
Right, so we're like the waves, right?
And the ocean is the spirit.
Exactly. We look separate, but we're all part of that same vast ocean.
Okay, but if we're all just waves in the ocean, does that mean we don't really have individual identities?
That's a big question, and it's one that Abke tackles head-on. In fact, he even goes so far as to suggest that this idea of separation is actually the root of a lot of suffering in the world.
Whoa, okay, we're getting into some deep territory now.
We are, but before we get into that, let's explore how he ties the everything is spirit idea to these universal laws he talks about, like karma and vibration.
Yeah, let's unpack those a bit. What exactly does he mean by those terms?
Well, he's using them in a very specific way. Karma, for him, is about how our actions create ripples in this interconnected web of spirit.
Okay, so every action has a consequence.
Kind of, but it's more about how everything is interconnected and affects everything else.
Right, and what about vibration?
For him, vibration is about how everything is constantly in motion and emitting a certain energy.
Okay, so everything has its own unique vibe, so to speak.
Exactly, and these vibes are constantly interacting and influencing each other.
I'm starting to see how these pieces fit together.
It's a complex picture, but it's fascinating, isn't it?
It is, but I have to admit it's a lot to wrap my head around.
He does acknowledge that it can be tough to grasp mentally.
Yeah, he uses that example of smelling a flower.
Oh, yeah, where he says it's like experiencing your own fragrance.
Yeah, that one really threw me for a loop.
He's trying to point out that our senses aren't separate from the world out there.
So it's all one big interconnected experience.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really making me rethink things.
It's a pretty profound shift in perspective.
So if there's no real separation between me and the world, then what does that mean for how I understand myself?
That's a big question, and it's one that we'll need to explore further. But I think we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have. This everything is spirit idea is really making me think.
Me too, and we haven't even gotten to the really heavy stuff yet.
Like the implications for evil and suffering.
Exactly. But that's a conversation for another time.
All right, I'm ready for a break. Let's pause here and we'll come back to this later.
Sounds good to me. We'll pick up where we left off soon. So we were talking about this whole no separation thing. And this is where Abke gets really intense.
Yeah, he says that believing in separation is what causes evil.
Yeah, that's a bold statement for sure.
So what's he getting at with that?
Well, he's saying that when we think of ourselves as separate,
Like separate from other people.
Yeah, from other people, from nature, from the whole universe, really.
Mm.
Then we start to get this us versus them mentality.
Great, like we're not all connected.
Exactly. And he thinks that leads to fear and competition.
And that's what causes us to do bad things.
That's his argument, yeah. He's saying that disconnect from that, like, underlying oneness.
The oneness we were talking about before?
Right, that's what leads to actions that cause suffering.
Okay, I can see how that me first kind of thinking can be bad.
Yeah, it's not exactly a recipe for world peace.
But is he really saying that all evil comes from that? What about like natural disasters or sickness?
Well, that's a good question.
I mean, those things cause suffering too, right?
They do, but I think he's mostly focused on the kind of evil that comes from human choices.
Okay, so the suffering we cause each other.
Yeah, and the suffering we cause to the planet, too.
That makes sense.
Like natural disasters, those are a different category, maybe?
Like part of a bigger picture that we don't control.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so if we believe him that separation is the root of all this evil, how do we get out of that trap?
Well, that's where meditation comes in.
Ah, meditation, the answer to all life's problems.
Well, he definitely thinks it's a big part of it.
So how does that work?
He says it's not enough to just understand this idea in your head.
Like intellectually get it.
Right, you have to actually experience it.
So it's more about a feeling than a thought.
Yeah, it's like a shift in consciousness.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we actually experience this oneness?
He believes that meditation and stillness are the key.
So it's about quieting the mind.
Exactly. When we calm down all that mental chatter, we can start to tune into that deeper reality.
Like tuning a radio to a specific frequency.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
I do have those moments sometimes where I feel like really connected to nature or to another person.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
It's like this feeling of expansiveness, like I'm part of something bigger.
It sounds like you're already getting a taste of what Abke's talking about.
Really?
Yeah, those moments of deep connection where you lose that sense of self, those are glimpses of that oneness.
But they don't last very long.
That's where the practice comes in.
So the more we meditate, the easier it is to access those states.
That's the idea, yeah. It's like training the mind to be more present.
Okay, that makes sense. But I still have this question.
Look at that.
If everything really is spirit and spirit is supposed to be all about love and goodness, how come there's so much pain and suffering in the world?
That's a tough one. It's the age-old question, right?
How can a good God let bad things happen?
Exactly. Abke doesn't have a simple answer for that.
But he does suggest that maybe our perception of suffering is part of the illusion. What do you mean?
He's hinting at the idea that suffering happens when we resist the flow of life.
When we try to control things, we can't.
Yeah, and when we cling to this idea of ourselves as separate,
So suffering comes from attachment.
That's one way to look at it, yeah.
Okay, I'm starting to see what he's saying, but it's a pretty different way of thinking about things.
It is. It's a real paradigm shift.
It makes me wonder, if we really did see the world this way, would it change how we live?
I think it would have to, right? If we truly believed that everything was connected, that we were all part of this one spirit, it would change how we treated each other, how we treated the planet.
That's a big if, though.
It is, but it's worth considering, don't you think?
I think so. I'm ready to explore this more, but let's take a break for now.
Okay, sounds good. We'll dive back in soon.
All right, we're back. And wow, there's a lot to unpack here with this everything is spirit idea.
It's a big one for sure, a real head spinner.
So, okay, let's say we do start seeing the world this way. Like, how would that actually change things?
Well, think about it. If you really believed that we were all connected, wouldn't you treat people differently?
I mean, yeah, I guess so.
Like, if you know we're all part of the same thing, you'd be more compassionate, right?
Yeah, more understanding, maybe?
Exactly. Like, it would be harder to see other people as them.
Because we're all just us.
Exactly. It's that shared humanity,
And what about nature? How would this change how we view nature?
Well, if you saw the spirit in everything, like Abke says.
Yeah, the spirit in the tree.
Right. Wouldn't you treat that tree with more respect?
I mean, I probably wouldn't want to chop it down anymore.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because you'd see it as an extension of yourself, a part of you.
Like hurting the planet would be like hurting yourself.
Right. It changes your whole perspective.
So it would be more compassionate to people, more respectful of nature.
And you know what else?
What?
It could change how you feel about yourself, too.
Really? How so?
Well, think about it. If you see that divine spark in yourself.
That spirit within?
Yeah. Wouldn't you be kinder to yourself?
I guess so. Less judgmental, maybe.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you're a part of something amazing, something bigger than yourself.
Okay, that's starting to make sense. But, it's funny.
What is it?
This all sounds kind of familiar, like a lot of spiritual traditions talk about this stuff, right?
You're absolutely right.
Like, it's not just Abke's unique idea, it's like a universal truth.
Yeah, you find these themes of interconnectedness and compassion in a lot of different spiritual paths.
So maybe it's not about finding the right religion or philosophy.
Maybe it's about recognizing these deeper truths that connect us all.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So whether or not you buy into this whole everything is spirit thing, I think it's worth exploring these ideas.
Yeah, it definitely gets you thinking.
And who knows, it might even change your life.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. It's been quite a journey.
We've looked at obvious claims, his analogies, all of it.
And even if we don't have all the answers, it's been a really thought-provoking discussion.
I think so too. And if you're listening, I'd encourage you to keep exploring these ideas
Yeah, read more, think about it, meditate, whatever works for you.
because at the end of the day, the most important exploration is the one that happens within.
That's a great point. If everything is spirit, then the answers are already inside us.
Exactly. So keep diving deep, everyone, and see what you discover.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been an amazing conversation.
It has. Thanks for having me.
And to all our listeners, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep that spark of curiosity alive.